Step into Justice Insight Cam. We provide an objective look at real-life law enforcement encounters caught on bodycam. Going beyond the surface, we dissect the legalities, the truth, and the educational aspects of every situation. Let's uncover the reality of policing.
Please, step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them.
I work here. This is my car.
You don't belong back here. ID. Now.
My hospital badge is right here.
Those can be fake. Move. Now.
The first thing she noticed wasn't the siren. It was the silence. That strange, late-night hospital silence that only happens after a long shift, when the last visitors have gone home. The elevators sigh instead of chatter, and the parking lot feels like an empty hallway under the sky. Nia Thompson stepped out through the employee entrance with her tote bag digging into one shoulder, and her badge still clipped to her scrub top, like she'd forgotten it wasn't part of her skin. Her feet ached in that deep way that doesn't show up until you stop moving. 12 hours of beeping monitors. 12 hours of families asking the same terrified question in different voices. 12 hours of trying to keep a calm face while your body runs on caffeine and duty. She crossed the sidewalk toward the staff lot, breathing in cold air that smelled like damp asphalt and disinfectant drifting from the loading dock. Her car was where she always left it. Same corner, same row, under the same flickering light that never quite decided whether it wanted to work. Nia dug her keys out of her bag, and that's when headlights snapped on. Bright, sudden, like someone had aimed a spotlight at her life. A police cruiser rolled in, slow and deliberate, tires crunching over gravel. It didn't pass through. It stopped, angled, blocking the lane like a warning. Then the voice came, flat through a loudspeaker, like it belonged to a man who'd already decided the ending. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them." Nia froze, not because she was guilty, because she recognized the tone. The kind of tone that turns ordinary into dangerous in a single sentence. Her hands lifted instinctively, palms open. I'm just getting in my car," she called back. A door opened, a boot hit the ground, and an officer walked toward her with the stiff posture of someone who believed control was the same thing as safety. This is the story of how a black nurse leaving a hospital after midnight was treated like a threat. How one officer's routine check turned into a public humiliation in a place she'd saved lives. And how a body camera captured enough to force a $1.5 million settlement that nobody expected, except the people who'd lived this pattern before. Before we go deeper, quick question. Where are you watching from? Drop your city, state, or country in the comments, because the unsettling part about stories like this is how familiar they feel in places that swear they're not like that. Now, back to that parking lot. Because the officer wasn't walking toward Nia like he was there to help. He was walking toward her like she was a problem. The hospital was called Mercy Ridge Medical Center, one of those regional facilities that served everyone from newborns to retirees, from highway accident victims to people who just needed stitches at 2 a.m. It wasn't glamorous. It was necessary. And Nia had spent the last 6 years making herself necessary inside those walls. She wasn't a new hire, she wasn't a visitor, she wasn't loitering. She was the nurse who caught sepsis before it turned into a funeral. The nurse who coached scared parents through breathing treatments. The nurse who stayed 10 minutes past her shift to hold an older man's hand because nobody else was there. Tonight had been brutal even by hospital standards. A pediatric asthma flare, a car wreck, a code blue that left the entire floor, wired, quiet, and shaky afterward. When Nia finally clocked out, she felt like her bones had been borrowed. All she wanted was her car, her seat heater, silence, and a shower that could wash the night off her skin. Instead, she got a cruiser. The officer stopped 5 feet away. White male, mid-30s. Clean uniform, a jaw that looked like it lived in permanent irritation. His nameplate read, Harris. His body camera sat on his chest with a small blinking light, a witness that couldn't be intimidated. "Step back from the car," he repeated, voice sharper now. Nia did exactly what he said. She took 2 slow steps back and stayed under the lamp. "Officer," she said carefully, "I work here. I'm leaving my shift. This is my vehicle." Harris looked her up and down, not like a person, like a story he didn't trust. "Who said you could park here?" he asked. Nia blinked. "It's the employee lot," she said. "I'm an employee." He didn't acknowledge the badge clipped to her chest. He didn't glance at the hospital logo on her scrubs. He stared at her face like he was searching for an excuse. "We got a call," he said. "A call?" "Suspicious person in the staff lot," he replied. "Someone reported you." The sentence landed like a weight. Suspicious, the most flexible word in the American dictionary. It can mean a broken window, or it can mean a black woman alone at night in a place someone else thinks she shouldn't be. Nia felt her stomach tighten. "I'm not suspicious," she said, still calm. "I'm exhausted." Harris stepped closer. "ID," he said. Nia lifted a hand toward her badge. "This is my hospital, ED," she said. "I said ID," Harris snapped, as if her badge didn't count because it came from the wrong authority. Nia hesitated. Not long, just enough to do that mental math every black professional learns early. If I move too fast, he'll say I'm reaching. If I move too slow, he'll say I'm resisting. If I ask why, he'll say I'm arguing. So she narrated. "I'm going into my bag," she said. "My wallet is inside." Harris rolled his eyes. "Don't get cute," he muttered. Nia's hand slipped into her tote and found her driver's license. She held it out. Harris took it, glanced at it, and immediately found the angle he wanted. "This address isn't the hospital," he said. Nia stared. "It's my home address," she replied. "That's how IDs work." Harris's lips tightened. "So you're saying you work here?" he said slowly, "but you can't prove it." Nia pointed, gently, controlled, at the badge still hanging from her chest. "I can," she said. "Right here." Harris didn't look. "Take it off," he said. "What?" "Take the badge off and hand it to me," he repeated. Nia felt heat creep up her neck. She reached for the clip. And that's when Harris said the first thing that told her this wasn't about procedure. "People steal those," he said. Nia froze with her fingers on the lanyard. Stole. A nurse. In scrubs. Leaving a hospital. Accused of stealing a badge to... What? Stand in an employee lot and wait for police? The logic didn't matter. The feeling did. Harris wanted her small. He wanted her apologetic. He wanted her proving herself. And Nia realized something in that moment that hit like cold water. If she didn't have cameras, witnesses, and paperwork, he could turn this into anything. The hospital's security cameras were mounted high on poles at the edge of the lot. But security cameras don't always tell the story clearly. They give you angles, distance, silent footage. The body camera, though? The body camera gives you tone, gaze, words. And Harris didn't realize what he was handing Nia, simply by keeping that thing running. Because as he stepped closer, he leaned his head slightly and spoke low. "Let me tell you something," he said. "This lot has rules, and people like you don't get to decide them." "People like you?" Nia's face stayed still, but inside something hardened. "What does that mean?" she asked. Harris's eyes narrowed. "It means stop acting like you run things," he said. "You're going to do what I say." Nia felt the urge to look around, see if anyone was watching, but the lot was mostly empty. A few cars, a distant hum of traffic, and one person pushing a mop bucket near the loading dock, head down, pretending not to see. Nia did what she'd learned to do in emergencies. She anchored her voice. "Officer Harris," she said, reading his nameplate like she wanted it on record. "I am a registered nurse. I am leaving my shift. I want to go home. If you have a reason to detain me, tell me. If not, I'd like to get in my car." Harris laughed once, a short, humorless sound. "You want to play lawyer?" he said. "We can play. You're trespassing until you prove you're allowed to be here." Trespassing in an employee parking lot at her place of work. Nia took a breath. "Do you want to call the hospital?" she asked. "I can have my supervisor come down. Security can verify me." Harris's face tightened like she'd offended him by offering a solution. "I don't need your help doing my job," he said. Then, with the kind of swagger that shows up right before someone makes a mistake on camera, he added, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to put your hands on the hood. I'm going to search your bag. And if you don't cooperate, you're going to spend the night in a cell." Nia's heart jumped. "Search my bag?" she repeated. "Yes," Harris said. "Now." "And what are you searching for?" Harris stepped closer again. "Contraband," he said. Nia stared at him. Contraband, in a nurse's tote bag. What he really meant was control. And then he did something that made the air change. His hand moved, hovered near his holster. Not drawing, not yet. Just close enough to remind her that his threat wasn't theoretical. This is the part where the story could have gone the way so many stories go. Quiet compliance. A woman humiliated, searched, and sent home shaking. An officer driving away with the belief that he'd handled something. And a complaint that gets lost in a system designed to absorb harm without changing. But this time, Nia had something most people don't. She had the habits of a person trained to document. Because nursing teaches you something early. If it isn't charted, it didn't happen. Nia didn't reach for her phone, not abruptly. She didn't make a dramatic announcement. She simply shifted her tote slightly, opened the side pocket with 2 fingers, and tapped her phone's screen. Audio record, not for the internet, for proof. Harris noticed anyway. "What are you doing?" he snapped. Nia kept her eyes steady. "I'm documenting," she said, "just like I do at work." Harris's face darkened. "You're not recording me," he said. "I'm recording my interaction," she replied. He stepped in closer, invading her space, voice dropping. "You think you're smart," he said. "Let's see how smart you look when you're face down on the asphalt." The sentence sat there, cold, unnecessary, a threat dressed up as authority. Nia's throat tightened, and then a voice came from behind her. "Officer?" A man in a dark security jacket stood near the employee entrance, hospital security. He'd been doing rounds, he'd seen the cruiser, and he'd decided to stop pretending not to see. Harris turned. "This is police business," he said. The security guard didn't flinch. "She's staff," he said. "I see her all the time. That's Nurse Thompson." For the first time, Harris actually looked, at the badge on her chest. Nia watched the gears grind, because here was the problem. If he backed down now, he'd have to admit he was wrong. And some people would rather escalate than feel embarrassed. Harris's jaw tightened. "Then why'd we get a call?" he barked. The security guard shrugged. "People call about anything," he said. "But she works here. You can verify with HR. I can call her floor supervisor right now." Harris stared at him, then at Nia. And instead of apologizing, of course he didn't, he chose a different exit. He pivoted the blame. "Well, she was being uncooperative," he said. Nia's eyes widened. "Uncooperative?" she repeated. "I answered every question." Harris pointed at her. "Don't point your finger at me," he snapped. "I didn't—" "Hands on the hood!" Harris barked again. The security guard stepped forward. "She's staff," he said. "I see her all the time. That's Nurse Thompson." For the first time, Harris actually looked, at the badge on her chest. Nia watched the gears grind, because here was the problem. If he backed down now, he'd have to admit he was wrong. And some people would rather escalate than feel embarrassed. Harris's jaw tightened. "Then why'd we get a call?" he barked. The security guard shrugged. "People call about anything," he said. "But she works here. You can verify with HR. I can call her floor supervisor right now." Harris stared at him, then at Nia. And instead of apologizing, of course he didn't, he chose a different exit. He pivoted the blame. "Well, she was being uncooperative," he said. Nia's eyes widened. "Uncooperative?" she repeated. "I answered every question." Harris pointed at her. "Don't point your finger at me," he snapped. "I didn't." "Hands on the hood!" Harris barked again. The security guard stepped forward. "Officer," he said carefully, "she's not a suspect. This is a staff lot. She's leaving work." Harris's eyes flashed. "You want to interfere?" he said. The security guard held up his hands. "I'm trying to de-escalate," he replied. De-escalate. A word that suddenly felt like it belonged to a different universe than Harris's ego. Nia's phone kept recording, and Harris, still lit up by the body cam, said the line that would later become the spine of the case. "You people always want special treatment," he said. "Not tonight." If you've ever had a moment where your professional identity evaporates in front of someone's prejudice, you understand what Nia felt. She wasn't Nurse Thompson to him. She wasn't ma'am. She wasn't a tired human being trying to go home. She was a category, and categories are easy to threaten. Nia swallowed and did what she did with panicked patience. She slowed everything down. "Officer Harris," she said, "I am not asking for special treatment. I am asking to be treated normally. Please stop threatening me. Please let me leave." Harris leaned in. "Or what?" he said. The security guard's radio crackled. A second security officer was arriving, and somewhere inside the hospital, a nurse manager on night shift was being called down, because the security guard wasn't just going to watch this happen. Harris heard the radio. You could see it on the body cam later, the exact moment he realized more witnesses were coming. His posture shifted. Not kinder, just more careful. He stepped back a half step. "Fine," he said, as if he was granting mercy instead of correcting his own behavior. "Let's verify." The nurse manager arrived in a navy cardigan, hair pulled back, eyes sharp with that hospital leadership fatigue. "What's going on?" she asked. Harris gestured at Nia like she was a nuisance. "She was suspicious," he said. The nurse manager stared at him. "She's my charge nurse," she said. "She's been on shift since 7 p.m. You can check her badge. You can check her time card. She works here." Harris's cheeks reddened. "All right," he muttered. "Just checking." Still no apology, still no acknowledgement of the threat. He thrust Nia's license back toward her. "Next time," he said, "don't make it hard." Nia took the license with a steady hand, and in the audio, you can hear her exhale. Not relief, control. Because she knew something now. He hadn't just harassed her, he'd done it on camera. Nia drove home with both hands on the wheel, and her heart still pounding like she'd sprinted. When she pulled into her apartment complex, she sat in her car for a full minute without moving. Her phone was still in her cup holder. Recording stopped, file saved. She stared at it like it was a tiny piece of justice. Small, fragile, but real. Inside, she washed her hands 3 times. Not because they were dirty, but because she couldn't shake the feeling of being handled. The next morning, her supervisor called. "Nia," she said softly, "security told me what happened. Are you okay?" Nia laughed once, not funny, just disbelief. "No," she said. "I'm not, and I'm not letting it go." That's the moment the story changed, because the harassment wasn't the end. It was evidence. Hospitals are bureaucracies. Police departments are bureaucracies. And bureaucracies have a reflex: protect the institution, minimize the incident, reduce a human experience into a line on a form. When Nia filed a complaint with the department, she got the familiar language. "We take all allegations seriously. We will review the matter. We are committed to professionalism." But professionalism isn't a slogan, it's a tone, and the tone was on the body cam. So Nia did what a lot of people don't have the energy to do after being shaken. She got organized. She requested the incident number. She asked for the body cam footage. She asked the hospital for security camera angles. She asked the security guard to write a statement. And she reached out to a civil rights attorney whose name had been passed around quietly among healthcare workers like a survival tip. His name was Daniel Reyes. He didn't promise miracles, he promised process. He listened to Nia's recording. Once, then again, and when it ended, he went quiet. "Did he ever say you were free to leave?" he asked. "No," Nia replied. "Did he threaten arrest?" "Yes." "Did he threaten force?" Nia's throat tightened. "Yes." Daniel nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "This isn't just rude. This is coercion. This is unreasonable detention. And the language he used, on his own body cam, turns this into something a jury will understand instantly." Nia stared at him. "You think we can win?" Daniel leaned forward. "I think they're going to want to settle," he said. "Here's the part people misunderstand about settlements. A city doesn't pay big money because it feels guilty. It pays because it feels vulnerable. Discovery is where that vulnerability gets exposed. Emails, training records, prior complaints, dispatch logs, body cam footage. And the most dangerous thing for a department isn't just one bad night on video. It's a pattern. Because if Officer Harris had done this before, if there were prior complaints about how he treated people who didn't belong in his mental picture of a place, then one night in a hospital parking lot becomes a much bigger story. When Daniel filed the lawsuit, the city responded the way cities do. They denied everything. They claimed Harris was responding to a suspicious person call. They said he acted in the interest of public safety. They argued he needed to verify identity, but then they had to hand over the footage. And footage doesn't care about legal strategy. It just plays. In the video, Harris didn't sound careful. He sounded irritated. He sounded possessive. He sounded like he believed a hospital lot belonged to his authority more than it belonged to the staff who kept the place running. "You people like you. Face down on the asphalt." A jury doesn't need a law degree to understand what those phrases mean, and a city attorney doesn't need a jury trial to know what those phrases can cost. Mediation was scheduled in a bland office building with beige walls and stale coffee. Nia sat beside Daniel at a long table, hands clasped so tight her knuckles looked pale. On the other side of the hall, the city's lawyers sat with risk managers. Officer Harris wasn't there. He rarely is. In these cases, the institution wants distance from the face of the problem. The mediator, a former judge with tired eyes, walked between rooms like a man trying to calm two storms. First offer, a low number, a non-apology, a promise of training. Daniel didn't blink. "No," he said. "Second offer, higher. Still not serious." Daniel shook his head again. Nia sat quietly, listening to numbers float through the air like they were measurements of what her dignity was worth. She wasn't thinking about payday. She was thinking about the moment Harris's hand hovered near his holster. She was thinking about that sentence, "face down on the asphalt," and how quickly a threat can become a headline. She was thinking about how many other nurses, techs, janitors, and security guards walked through that lot alone at night. If this happened to her, how many times had it happened to someone with less leverage and no recording? The mediator returned again. This time his voice changed. Less negotiation, more warning. "They don't want this in front of a jury," he said. Daniel nodded. "Then they know what to do," he replied. An hour later, the number arrived. $1.5 million, with conditions, no admission of wrongdoing, confidentiality language, policy revisions, a commitment to retraining, a review of complaints, money and paper trying to contain a moment that should have never existed. Nia heard the number and felt nothing like triumph. She felt tired, and, surprisingly, she felt grief, because the fact that a hospital nurse needed a 7-figure settlement to be treated like a human being was its own kind of indictment. Daniel leaned in. "You don't have to take it," he whispered. "We can go to trial." Nia looked down at her hands. Then she looked up. "What happens if we go to trial?" she asked. Daniel was honest. "It takes years," he said. "It gets public. They'll dissect your life. They'll try to make you look difficult, and it will keep you living in that parking lot over and over." Nia closed her eyes for a moment. Then she said the sentence that sounded like defeat, but wasn't. "I want it to stop," she said. So she signed. When the settlement happened, the city didn't hold a press conference saying, "We were wrong." They rarely do. They issued a short statement about resolving a dispute. They emphasized that the officer acted within the scope of his duties, even as they wrote a check that said the opposite in the only language they couldn't spin. Inside the hospital, the news traveled faster, not as gossip, as caution, as validation. Nurses whispered in break rooms. Security officers nodded quietly. A few older staff members said, "I'm glad she didn't let that slide." And Nia, still doing her job, still walking those halls, noticed something shift. The lot had more lighting installed. Security increased patrols. The hospital updated policies about police interactions on campus. Not because the hospital suddenly discovered empathy, because they discovered liability, and liability makes institutions move. As for Officer Harris, the official statements were vague. Administrative review, internal investigation, reassignment. Some consequences that departments prefer to keep quiet. But the real consequence, the one that mattered, was that his behavior had a cost. Not absorbed, not ignored, not shrugged off, paid. Weeks later, Nia parked in the same staff lot. Same corner, same row. The flickering light still flickered, but the air felt different. Not safe, not magically fixed, just different. Because when she stepped out of her car this time, she didn't look over her shoulder immediately. She stood for a second, breathing in the night, and she realized something. The encounter hadn't just scared her, it had trained her to anticipate, to brace, to carry the weight of someone else's bias like it was her responsibility. The settlement didn't erase that, but it did something else. It took the cost of that bias and shoved it back where it belonged. On the institution, on the city, on the systems that keep telling people like Nia to be grateful for crumbs of normal treatment. Because what Harris demanded that night wasn't proof of identity, it was proof of belonging. And belonging is not something a nurse should have to argue for while wearing scrubs. So let me leave you with this. If you were Nia, tired, alone, leaving a hospital after midnight, what would you have done? Would you have complied in silence just to get home safe? Would you have fought in the moment and risked escalation? Or would you have done what she did? Document, endure, and then force the system to answer with consequences? Drop your answer in the comments, because how you respond to that question says a lot about what you've lived, and what you've had the luxury of never having to live. Because this story isn't rare. It just isn't always filmed. A vague call, a suspicious person, a parking lot, a badge, a threat, and a person who is forced to prove they have a right to exist in a space they already earned. Nia didn't break a law. She didn't steal a car. She didn't trespass. She didn't do anything except walk to her own vehicle after keeping strangers alive. And still, she was treated like a problem. Until the body cam showed the truth, until the paperwork showed the pattern, until a city wrote $1.5 million on a line and tried to call it resolution. But here's what that number really meant. It meant the evidence was loud. It meant the threats were real. It meant someone finally had to pay for the damage that usually gets handed to the person targeted. And it meant one more officer learned, too late, that a body camera doesn't protect you from accountability. It protects the truth.
Thank you for joining us. If you appreciate this level of detail, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Justice Insight Cam. Stay knowledgeable, keep yourself safe, and tune in for our next update.